Well, it's that time to kick off the Week 1 games. We're headed right into that direction right now as games start this Friday, the 30th, and then, of course, there's a couple games being played on Saturday. In our area, obviously, we have Orangeville hosting Aquin, but we got quite a few big games on the docket this week as we get ready to kick off the season.
Yeah, and those being the EPC at Lena Winslow and Forreston at Dakota.
Yeah, so it's another great season is getting ready to get started. Obviously, there's only 7 games per week this year, and with the changes in the scheduling and the rules with IHSA on contact, all Friday contests are only going to be varsity-only contests. The conference has agreed to start all games at 7 p.m., so it gets us an earlier kickoff, which ultimately gets us home earlier to get things done, started up, get up to date with scores across the state as well. I'm excited for what we have coming up with the whole north-south breakdown. Obviously, a lot of people are excited for it as well. And, you know, as we start to break down some of these games, obviously we mentioned it on our north and south previews, but we got Coach Big Pete coming with deep dish football for the game of the week.
And his overtime game
in Dakota, and his overtime game of the week in Orangeville. So that's excellent. It's great to have that. His breakfast with Coach Big Pete will be taking place in Freeport. I'm not sure where he's setting that up, if that's at his hotel or wherever, but it's awesome that he's coming to town, and he's going to be at 2 of our games here in the NUIC. So it's exciting.
It is, just like I think you said it last week, just expanding our awesome conference into the Chicagoland area.
Yep, I agree. With that, we have 2 new journalists that are going to be helping us out this year, Chris O'Brien and Austin LeClaire. So that'll help us expand out our personal coverage as well to get more games covered, give us more recaps. The sooner we can get those recaps out, obviously we try to have them out and published by 7 o'clock every morning on Saturday so everybody can read it like it was coming from a newspaper. So we'll get ready to break down all these games coming up here in Week 1 right now. Our first breakdown of the 2019 season takes us to East Dubuque, where they're going to play host to AFC. Last year, AFC finished 0-9, where East Dubuque finished 3-6. And the last time these 2 teams met was actually back in 2014 in Week 7, when East Dubuque was in the Upstate Division, and East Dubuque won that game 27-24.
So, looking into this season, with AFC coming in 0-9, you know, they've got to make some things happen. We were talking, and it's almost like this game's going to be tough, right? We've got AFC, short on numbers. It's going to be tough. East Dubuque, they have to start off tough. And, you know, on the note of the Warriors, their schedule, it's tough.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you take a look at what East Dubuque has in front of them schedule-wise, and they're going to open up with AFC, obviously, this week, and then they have Milledgeville. After that, the rest of the schedule does get tough because, you know, you start to go through Lena Winslow, Aquin, Orangeville, Dakota, Du-Pec, Stockton, Galena. All those teams are either A, playoff teams, or B, getting built up to become playoff teams right now. And you take a look at most of them, historically, they're in the playoffs year in and year out, with the exception of Orangeville, but Orangeville is trying to go for their 3rd straight playoff appearance this year, and they have a team that's set to go. As far as AFC, you know, coming off of an 0-9 season, that is extremely tough. But you know, they bring back a good nucleus of players. They were a very young team. They only had 5 seniors last year. So if Coach Winterland can get them guys built up, they have the size on the line that can be able to make things happen. And like we said in our South preview show on AFC, as long as they can get their offensive line going with their option offense, they should be able to do things. And having a quarterback in Ethan Drew that is familiar with the offense might allow the Raiders to be able to do something passing-wise, if needed, to offset East Dubuque. But if you take a look at East Dubuque, too, they also graduated a good core of skill players. Their quarterback, their tight end, their wide receiver. They lost some very good key players. But they have a line this year that's going to be another year older, another year stronger, which is exactly what East Dubuque needs to do in order to shore up both their offense and defensive sides of the ball. This game's going to be in East Dubuque for AFC. That is probably going to be their longest traveling game of the year, which it looks to be as they're on the road, East Dubuque, Stockton, West Carroll, and EPC. So yes, this is going to be their longest trip of the year.
And that's, going to play a factor. I imagine.
Well, especially when you take a look at a 7 o'clock kick, you got to be there by 6:30. You're looking at probably close to a 3-hour bus ride, probably 2-hour bus ride, 2.5, depending on how fast their bus drivers go. If we had Harvey driving, we'd be getting there in, 3 hours going 50 miles an hour, but that was back in my day. Anyhow, with that said, I like the Warriors in this one.
I agree. I'm going to take the Warriors.
I think East Dubuque's prepared to get the first win of the year. Ultimately, it'd be great to see either one of these teams win. This is going to be a big game for both of them to kick off the season. Likewise, it's a big game for every team to kick off the season. But the Warriors is my pick. Our second contest takes us to Durand, where the Du-Pec Rivermen are going to play host to the Amboy Clippers. Both teams come in after having 3-6 performances just a season ago. And last year when they met in Week 4, where Amboy won that game 24-6. Obviously, this Week 1 matchup is going to be pivotal for both teams.
Yeah, depending on how they play their matchups, it's very likely that both teams could see their respectable playoffs, whether it be 2A or 3A. This is really going to, I think, set the tone for the year for both teams.
I would agree. It's one of those games, you got to take a look at their schedules, what they can do to make the playoffs. And, Du-Pec and Amboy, obviously this is that game where both teams need it. But you take a look at Du-Pec's schedule moving forward. EPC and Dakota are going to be tough games for the Rivermen. And they're really going to have to prove themselves in those games in order to get wins if they look to upset both of those two teams. Then they have Orangeville and Galena and Stockton and East Dubuque in a week of 4 straight games. Those 4 games is really going to be where the Rivermen can set themselves apart. Obviously, those 4 games are games that Du-Pec is going to probably be evenly matched with those 4 teams. West Carroll is going to be another one that they can play with West Carroll. They actually played very well with West Carroll last year. And then they end the season with Lena Winslow. Obviously, we all know where Lena Winslow is going to stand. So Du-Pec has a schedule where if they can come together and make things happen and finish the close ball games that they could not finish a year ago, they can change that 3-6 and improve again and get to 5-4 and 6-3. And as we stated in our North preview, that should be their focus. Their focus is nowhere close to winning the conference this year. Granted, if they do, that's great. But that's not where the focus should be right now. The focus needs to be on let's get to the playoffs. And it starts right here against Amboy, a game that they can turn that 24-6 loss into their favor coming into 2019. Flip the page. The Clippers. They're on the same boat. They're going to have a little bit more of an improved team, a bigger line, something that's going to go up with these guys.
Well, before you get into that, let's start looking at their schedule. Next week they're playing Lena Winslow. And then they've got Forreston and West Carroll to follow that. I mean, so they could see a little bit of a challenge, and hopefully they wouldn't let that start eating at them.
Well, and I mean that's a great point to pull up there because it could easily be 2-2 for the Clippers going into Week 5, or it could be 0-4. 0-4, they're going to have a hard time getting to the playoffs when you still have Aquin, Galena that's on the rise, EPC that's still going to be tough, Milledgeville still going to be competitive on the schedule. The chances of them getting through that gauntlet, starting off 0-4 and then winning out from there, is very slim. But you take a look at Week 1 here against Du-Pec, you get that win. Obviously, the chances of them beating Lena Winslow and Forreston are not that high. Can upsets happen? Absolutely. We saw Amboy play with a quarterfinalist in Dakota last year, as did East Dubuque, the team we mentioned in our previous game matchup. So can they play with them? Yes. Do they have the physicality to stay with them is going to be the question. But if they can get the win against Du-Pec, they could potentially go into Week 4 with West Carroll, a game that they can match up good with them. And have a good opportunity to get to that 2-2 record to build from there. This game, though, even though it's in Durand at the worst field in the NUIC, I like the Rivermen.
I agree.
Aquin at Orangeville. Aquin came into last season with some big hopes coming off of back-to-back quarterfinal appearances. But with a young team and a new coach, they finished at 4-5. Obviously, Aquin had a couple games that they were very well in the games and just couldn't pull out the wins. Orangeville, on the other hand, finished the season 5-4, 5-5 overall after their first round loss to Ottawa Marquette in the playoffs. This game last year took place in Orangeville as well, a game that Orangeville won 26-20. One of those games that Aquin thought that they could have had. And if you take a look at some of the games and the stats and what actually took place, Aquin probably let one get away there.
Oh, I agree. I mean, when we reviewed the tape, I definitely think Aquin outplayed Orangeville, but sometimes all it takes is a little bit of luck.
It does. Obviously, both teams are looking for big years this year, and to get to the playoffs, Week 1 for them is going to be huge looking at their schedules. Orangeville, to start off with, starting off with Aquin is going to be a true testament to what the Broncos are. And then they come into some weeks where, AFC, Galena, Du-Pec, East Dubuque. So, they have the potential opportunity of being anywhere from 3-2 to 5-0. Before things really start to get a little bit tougher. But overall, I feel that Orangeville's schedule is favorable, to say the least, for the Broncos coming into 2019. Aquin, on the other hand, you open up with Orangeville. You're going to get a Stockton team, which can't really put a button on Stockton right now. You got people saying they're going to be 6-3. You got others saying that they could be 3-6. What do you do? We'll talk about that later. But Milledgeville, East Dubuque, and then you have Amboy, which is going to be a good game. EPC, and then you still have Forreston, West Carroll, and of course AFC on schedule. So I like what Aquin has right now. Aquin has line size. We've been talking about Aquin finally getting a line that can allow their skilled guys to be protected and be able to compete like they're going for a state title. We haven't seen Aquin have this kind of size since the 2011 season. Orangeville has a running back that's chasing history in Garrett Rodabaugh. And Rodabaugh, provided he rushes for 1,500 yards ballparkish this year, he's going to get 4,000 yards and join a small echelon of kids from our conference that have reached that plateau in career history. And to be quite honest, I'm hoping he does it. because it's just fun to see. And that's where I get to stand on this side of the camera and say, hey, I don't care who really wins the game. I just want to see great football. Obviously, Orangeville's got a lot of things to look forward to, too, though. They're going for their third straight playoffs.
Oh,
Yep. Be the only time. It'll be the second time, not the only time. It'll be the second time in school history that they would be able to make 3 consecutive playoff trips. Last trips coming back in 1991, 92, and 93. But this game really sets the tone for both of them going into the season. I think it's a matchup that either one of them could win. But I think the line edge is going to go to the Bulldogs.
Aquin's my pick.
Aquin's her pick.
Well, I'm glad neither of us can talk.
I like the Bulldogs. I like the Bulldogs by 3 scores in this one. I think they have a vendetta against Orangeville, and it's going to come to a halt in Orangeville as the Bulldogs lay down the smack.
I'm sure you weren't talking to anybody, were you?
No, never.
All right, just checking.
Never. We head over to, what is it, the Panther Bowl in Lena Winslow?
The Athletic Bowl.
Oh.
In Lena Winslow.
Well, I like calling it the Panther Bowl. Anyway, Lena Winslow is playing host to EPC in the Rumble on Route 73, or is it the Route 73 Rumble? Either way, we're backwards today. Big matchup though. EPC finished last season 12-1. Lena Winslow finished the season 11-2. Both of them met their demise in the semifinals in very close ball games, both losing by a touchdown to the eventual state champs. Last year, this game took place in Lena Winslow as well. I should say in Lena, at Lena Winslow High School. In Week 5, where EPC stunned the conference with the win 20-14 over the Panthers, which led to EPC winning their 5th conference title since 2010. Obviously, the last time these two teams met in Week 1, it was in Pearl City in 2016. The Panthers were the heavy favorite in that game, and EPC upended the Panthers that time too, 28-14. EPC did lose a lot. You know, they lost Lucas Peterson, they lost Spong, they lost the Smart Jessies, they lost the Kemples. What they do have though is they have the line, minus Addison Keltner because he left too. But you have Wyatt Hammer, Elijah Dirtz, and Bryson Sturdivant anchoring the line. And then you're going to throw a couple kids in there to offset the 2 positions that need to be filled. So they have a lot of strength, specifically on the left side of the line, because Sturdivant's a center, and then you got Dirtz at left guard and Hammer at left tackle. Mm-hmm. So they need a right guard and right tackle. But everything else is going to be brand new. I mean, you have Braden Heron back, but he's not going to be available for this game, unfortunately. So, like you said, Lena Winslow has the team that should be able to win. Lena Winslow, most likely, rankings don't come out yet, but they will very soon. Lena Winslow is going to be ranked number 1 to open up the season. Mark my words. And if they're not, they're going to be number 2. They're going to be right there. They are a state championship contender right now. And how could they not be? They have 2 Division I kids on the team. Now, obviously, Division I kids mean nothing if you don't show up to play. You still got to come to play. You got to come ready to play. And you have to have that mindset and that mental focus. Lena Winslow has always been known to start off slow. Granted, I understand why. Coach Aaron loves to get his seniors the opportunity to earn their starting positions and honor their commitment to Panther football to start off the season. And then it's their job to keep it or they lose it. I respect that. I really do. Talking to Coach Aaron before, his goal is not to play his best football in Week 1. It's to play his best football in Week 9 going into the playoffs. Obviously, the playoffs is always on the slate
Yep.
for the Panthers, and that state championship carrot is always the prize. In this game, I like the Panthers.
It's not a secret. I bleed the black and gold. My pick is also the Panthers.
Our next stop in week 1 takes us to Stockton, where the Blackhawks were going to host the Milledgeville Missiles. Last year, Milledgeville finished the season 10-1. They went 9-0 in Upstate Conference play, or 9-0 in the regular season, I should say, 7-0 in Upstate Conference play. Where Stockton finished the season 7-3. They went 6-1 in conference play. That one loss coming to the Missiles. And that game took place in week 3 last year, where Milledgeville came in, won 34-8. That was a game that was dominated by the Missiles, specifically on special teams. The rest of the game was actually very close when you take a look at the stats, the scores, and everything else. So the score on that final was somewhat deceiving. However, both teams lost big-time players coming into 2019.
So they both have that affecting them to begin the season. Who have they put in those roles, and how are we going to move forward?
Correct. Obviously, both teams are still going to be very competitive with Coach Roble and Coach Snyder at the helms of both of these programs. They're going to keep pushing people to be better, to realize their potential, drive the weight room. So you take a look at what they need to do in order to get where they need to go. And right now, Stockton and Milledgeville, like a lot of our games so far, this is a game both of them need to have for a realistic shot at making the playoffs in 2019. And the reason why is just the change in the structure of the conference scheduling. Stockton's going to start off with Milledgeville, and then they're going to go right on the road to Aquin next week. Both of them could be big-time games for the Blackhawks. Will be. I shouldn't say going to be or could be. They're going to be big-time games for the Blackhawks. Then they have AFC, Galena, and then you have Lena Winslow, Du-Pec, Orangeville, which Stockton has had Orangeville's number over the years, but I think that's going to change in 2019, especially with what Orangeville has coming back. East Dubuque, that could be a game that could go either way. It's a great matchup, but then you end the season with Dakota, which we already saw what Stockton did to Dakota last year. Actually, other way around. Dakota beat Stockton last year 48-8. So they have a daunting schedule to start, a meaty middle there, and then they got some games that normally they would coast in. They're not going to coast this year. The playing ground for Stockton, the disparity has grown more to a parity in 2019, which is great. This is what makes it fun. As far as Milledgeville, same storyline. They lost a lot of dudes off their team last year. They were senior dominated. They only have a few guys returning. They have a good group of kids coming up, but numbers is going to hurt the Missiles as well. Stockton's going to have 45 kids. Milledgeville only has like 24, 25 kids. That's a huge discrepancy when you're comparing what you have available on the sidelines to bring in and substitute out. With that said, Stockton, East Dubuque, Aquin, EPC, Forreston, Milledgeville could easily find themselves starting off the year 0-5. Or they could be at 2-3, maybe 3-2. I highly doubt they're going to get through that gauntlet at 5-0. Sorry, it's just the truth on what I see, my opinion. But AFC, West Carroll, Amboy, Orangeville to finish out the season, provided they can keep building that team. That's where this game here against Stockton in week 1 becomes a very pivotal matchup for the Missiles. But going on the road to Stockton, I like the Blackhawks.
I also like the Blackhawks.
Game number 6 takes us to Galena, where the gentlemen play. Galena is going to play host to the West Carroll Thunder. West Carroll comes in with they come in after finishing 2018 with the 3-6 record. They're not coming into the game with a 3-6 record. Woo! Galena, on the other hand, finished last year 2-7. However, in Week 5 last year, Galena won this matchup 10-0, which put Galena at 2-3 to start the season, and then obviously they lost the rest of the way out. Obviously, both teams struggled last year. Both of them had some promise, but a lot of underclassmen. So, both teams are facing new schedules this year. Again, storyline.
Week 1 is going to be important.
Exactly. So, you take a look at Galena. Obviously, they have some offensive firepower, and they got some good skilled players, seniors at key positions, running back, quarterback, wide receiver. They also have a couple underclassmen that are going to fill that void too. And then they have their big hogs on the front line that are actually going to bring some size to the table, but those guys are still young in their years, sophomores and juniors. So you're getting a mixture of experience and inexperience when you're looking at the 2019 Galena Pirates. West Carroll, on the other hand, you have a lot of experience coming back. You have a lot of 3-year starters returning, and they're seniors this year. Does that sound familiar to the West Carroll Thunder? Probably. It does to me anyway when talking about West Carroll. West Carroll looks to have that opportunity to take their 3-6 record and turn it around and get back to the playoffs. Galena too looks like they can be much more improved. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people in Galena are excited for what is coming up the pipeline again to get the tradition of the Pirates back into the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Like we mentioned before, this is the first time that they've missed 3 straight playoffs since the early 80s. It's also the first time that they've had 3 consecutive losing seasons since the late 1950s. So, yeah, it's amazing. 60 years of Galena football has gone by, and more times than not, they are on the winning end of things. They have 505 career wins in school history, which sits second only to the Stockton Blackhawks at 599. But, you take a look at their schedule, and we'll take a look at Galena first.
Well, in Galena, they're going to start off with West Carroll, obviously. And then they're going to hit up Forreston, which will be a matchup. And then that's just Orangeville, Stockton, Du-Pec, Amboy, Dakota, Lena Winslow in Week 8, and East Dubuque in Week 9.
So looking at that schedule for Galena, that's a very formidable schedule that could be a rocky road for them.
Yeah.
But it's also going to be one of those roads, if they can pull up some wins and maybe potentially some upsets, that's actually a schedule that's going to sharpen their blades and get them ready for the playoffs, provided they can get enough wins to get into the playoffs. Mm-hmm. On the other side with West Carroll, obviously they're starting with Galena, and then they have Dakota, EPC, Amboy, AFC, Forreston, Milledgeville, Du-Pec, and Aquin. So the same story really can be said for West Carroll. That's where this game's really going to be coming down to what they need to do. West Carroll has not favored very well against Dakota, EPC, Forreston. So that means, looking at things, that's potentially 3 losses right there. Aquin is going to be much improved, more so than what people think. But I like the Thunder in this matchup.
I also like West Carroll. Well, you ready to talk about the game of the week?
Yeah. You kicking it off or what?
I guess. Well, we've got last year's Class 1A state champion, Forreston Cardinals. They're coming over our way, and they're going to be picking up the Dakota Indians.
That's true. So Forreston obviously won the state championship last year, 44-6 over Camp Point Central, finishing the season with a 12-2 record. Along the path, they had to beat Dakota, not once, but twice, where Dakota finished 8-4. Obviously, their last matchup was in the quarterfinals, where Forreston won 22-20. And then in week 3, they also met up in Dakota, where Forreston won that game more convincingly, 40-20. Obviously, Dakota was able to turn a 20-point loss in their first contest into a 2-point quarterfinal loss in a nail-biter of a game. But now with the difference in the conferences, this is going to be one of those games that'll be a measuring stick for both teams entering 2019.
Forreston lost a lot, quite a bit, of seniors' graduation. Dakota, not so much.
You're right. I mean, you take a look at what Forreston has returning, and you're like, man, they have more returning than what you can remember. But you look on the defensive side of the ball, they're only returning 4 starters.
Mm-hmm.
On the offensive side of the ball, they're only returning 5 starters. But you have a lot of people that are returning for Forreston that saw significant amounts of playing time that are going to be there. You have one guy that we mentioned very shortly on our South preview video last week in Jacob Dye at right guard. And then you have Kyler Henefeld and Derek DeVries. So they have a very good line. 3 dudes that are returning on that line that were starters in the state championship game. You bring back Ethan Mulder, who's been running the ball for the Cardinals, at least in a backup role or a semi-backup role for the last 2 seasons. He's going to be one of the go-to guys this year in his senior year. You got Don Christensen, who came on like a heat-seeking missile late in the year. And if he brings that kind of energy right out of the gates this year, which I really expect him to, there's a big threat right there. And then it's just putting the pieces together. I mean, you still got Bailey Culler at quarterback. You got Boomgarden back at tight end. And then you just transition who you have back over onto the defensive side of the ball. Dakota, they lost their backfield, basically. But they have a lot of good kids, good character kids coming up this year that can make a very big impact for the Indians in 2019. This is going to be a matchup. Both these teams are going to be state ranked when the state rankings come up. I expect Forreston to be either number 1, number 2, or number 3. They're going to be ranked top 3 for sure. I expect them to be number 2 behind Lena Winslow. I just think that Lena Winslow is going to carry the votes to be that number 1 ranked team. However, Forreston's going to be right there knocking on that door.
I feel like this game is going to be won by really who wants it more. I mean, you've started your preseason poll, or your pick, I guess I want to call it, and you've got some interesting votes, and it could go really either way.
Yeah. You take a look at the pick'em, and you're right. You have a good mixture of people taking Forreston or Dakota right now. And I think some of that has to do with the close game that it was in the quarterfinals. This game is in Dakota. You're going to have a little bit of variance there. I mean, with Dakota, you got Josh Clark back at quarterback. You have Luke Schwartz back on the line. And then you start looking at what they're going to do for running backs. And you're going to have Evan Riggle. You're going to have Quentin Heilmeyer getting some carries. You could potentially see Cade Wales getting some carries. You just got some guys that are going to be able to make plays that people don't know about yet. Or if they do, they only know about them in small roles because they haven't been big impact players on the offensive side of the ball, but they have been on the defensive side of the ball. You're bringing back experience on the line with Riley Jones, Richie Thompson, Both those guys were linebackers that started last year on the defensive side of the ball, along with Heilmeyer, and Riggle was at corner. I can see Riggle coming up. You got Wyatt Rocky returning too. So, this is just, like you said, this is going to be a great matchup. Obviously, it was picked to be not only our game of the week, but Deep Dish Football's game of the week for small school football. So Coach Big Pete's going to be in Dakota Friday night. Huge thing for this game, just to blow it up. You got 2 state-ranked teams coming in Dakota Friday night for a marquee matchup to kick off the 2019 season, and that just gets you excited.
So, speaking of your pick'em, who you got?
Who do you have?
Well, I've got the Forreston Cardinals.
Honestly, I got to take the Cardinals myself. I think they have the firepower to get it done. Like I said, this could be one of those toss-up games. I think you honestly could go either way in this game. I just feel that Forreston is going to be more prepared week 1. And I think some of it just has to do with the fact that they've owned Dakota for the last several years, with the one exception in 2015 when Dakota beat Forreston coming off that state championship year. But outside of that, Forreston has had Dakota's number.
So you do not foresee a championship hangover?
No, I don't. I think Forreston's going to come out ready to go. I think Coach Zick's going to have these guys prepared. Likewise, I expect the same thing on Dakota's side of the ball with Coach Free. I think Coach Free and his staff is going to have the Indians ready to go, and that's why I really think this is going to be a great game of the week. And I can't fault you either way for where you pick this game. It's going to be an awesome game, and if you're not tied into any specific team, Dakota is where you should be Friday night. All right, that gives you a look into what we have going on week 1. Obviously, we got some very big matchups all around. We have a lot of games that are going to determine how teams finish for the year, or if they can see the playoffs taking place right away in week 1. Marquee matchups, obviously Orangeville hosting Aquin, Forreston at Dakota, and EPC at Lena Winslow in the Route 73 Rumble. Just a lot of big games. I mean, you can even take a look. That Du-Pec Amboy game's going to be a big one. Stockton Milledgeville could be a big one. And AFC East Dubuque, if AFC has the improvements that they've been talking about, that game can also turn some heads in the conference and make some changes. It's an exciting time. Week 1 is always one of those weeks where you don't know what's going to happen, because you're still taking a look at, okay, what happened last year? Who's coming back? Who's not coming back? And all these things play factors. Who's had the biggest off-season improvements? Who's had the most commitment to the weight room? Obviously, you have your big hitters. Lena Winslow, Forreston, Dakota, EPC. Them guys live and die in the weight room. Du-Pec's added that into their repertoire. Orangeville's done it. Stockton's done it. Aquin's done it. You're getting so much buy-in into this stuff. AFC's even done it. I've seen many videos of AFC in the weight room just trying to plug away. And that's what it takes. And that's what makes the NUIC such a great conference.
I mean, when we've gone downstate, we've talked to people, and they ask us, why does the NUIC do so well? And what's the answer?
The weight room. The weight room is the biggest divider between being great and being average. And it's so easy, but you got to get that commitment, because it's not easy work to put in. But once you get that buy-in, man, it makes a huge change. And you're right. We get a lot of people asking us, why are they so good year after year after year? And that's the answer I always give, because it's that simple. But you got to do it. You got to put in the work. So week 1 is here. It's going to be a great week. You got anything to say?
No, but I feel inspired to go back to the gym, even though we were already there Wednesday.
Yes. As always, root for the NUIC.